Hello everyone, my name is Carrie Campbell. I'm with NEXT Ensemble and I'll be your host for this episode 4 of Force Majeure. We'll be talking about the Black Death, the plague that spread throughout Europe in the mid-14th century. In about a 5-year period in the mid-14th century, Europe lost over half its population to a pandemic known as the Black Death. This bubonic plague outbreak started in Asia and spread very rapidly, reshaping the political and cultural landscape of Europe along its way, and the specter of the plague loomed large on into the 18th century. Whenever political and cultural landscapes change, so do the arts. But first, of course, creatives have to get out alive. A very common response to the Black Death was to find refuge and hope in religion, and we will certainly survey some of those responses in a minute. There was, unsurprisingly, another strategy, however: to eat, drink, sing, dance, and be merry, making the most of one's time left on earth. Giovanni Boccaccio vividly describes the plague and people's reactions to it in his Decameron, a work of historical fiction informed by his first-hand knowledge. The men and women at the center of the narrative are secluded, we might say socially distanced, in a palace outside Florence, and they entertain themselves with activities bordering on decadence. Each day in the novel ends with a song performed by the characters, and another plague survivor, composer Lorenzo da Firenze, is the only known composer of the era to set these songs to music. Here's one of them. One of the problems with studying music of this era and earlier is that our view of it is skewed based upon what has survived in musical notation. The range of music we know, then, is limited by that which was written down, that which was kept for whatever reason after it was performed, and that which was simply lucky enough to survive over the centuries, which is really no small feat for a piece of paper. This is all just to point out that the music we know is but a fraction of the music that was being made during this time. And it ought to be viewed as just the tip of a very large and diverse iceberg. Unlike those spending their last days with wine and song, religious institutions were quite good at preserving their music, which explains why so much medieval and early Renaissance music that we know comes from that tradition. A large body of religious work during the Black Death centers around the figure of Saint Sebastian, who, in addition to his other duties as patron saint of soldiers, archers, and athletes, intercedes on the behalf of the plague-stricken. According to legend, Saint Sebastian was tied to a tree and shot with arrows in the 3rd century on behalf of a Roman emperor, but he survived miraculously until, after fully recovering, he went back to warn that same emperor about his sins and was clubbed to death. Here's a work by Dufay calling upon Saint Sebastian. we see in the realm of secular music poems and song that are directly influenced by this tragedy. Poet Christine de Pizan lost her husband from the plague in 1390 and wrote a text deep with despair and hopelessness. That highly personal, yet universally relevant text was set to music early in the next century by Gilles Binchois. In early modern cosmology, the harmonious alignment of the universe literally impacted the harmoniousness between and within people. Therefore, if one wanted to place blame for the pestilence, that blame was placed on inauspicious alignment of the stars. So, one solution was to pray for those stars to come back in line. The hymn Star of Heaven equates the Virgin Mary with a star and asks her to intercede and hold the constellations in check. This particular piece, I'll begin with a chant version of it and then fade out and then come back in with a fully harmonized version.
Stella celi exturpavit, quae lactavit Dominum, moitis pestem quam plantavit, primus parens hominum. Ipsa
This last piece is by Johannes Martini, and the somewhat joyful dance-like section toward the end serves as a reminder that 14th century doctors, just as today, encouraged finding joy even when isolated. Remy Chu, a modern-day music scholar, tells us in his book on this subject about music being sung by neighbors through open windows as a means of singing together, apart. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And on behalf of Next Ensemble, I would like to wish you well, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.